have an older sister who is 2 years older than me. My sister, Arya, and I have always been close since we were young, and she used to take care of me a lot. Even after Arya got married, we continued to have interactions, and I became close with her triplets and husband as well. However, one day, Arya and her husband suddenly passed away. The 3 young children were left behind in sorrow, and I struggled to accept the reality. But I couldn't continue grieving forever. If I slept, the cruel reality was that the sun would rise again the next morning. I made up my mind to live brightly for Arya's sake. My name is Gianna. I am now 28 years old and a professional basketball player. Since I was a kid, I've been completely focused on basketball, so while my classmates were getting married, I missed my chance. But thanks to Arya's presence, I never felt lonely. My sister's name is Arya, and she got married at 21 years old. By the time she was 22, she had given birth to triplets. At that time, I had just graduated from high school and was still living at home. Arya, who had moved out ahead of me, often brought her children home, and I would play with them. Arya's husband, who was 5 years older than her, was a good person and took care of me as well. However, whenever I visited Arya's house, I felt uneasy. The reason was Arya's in-laws, her husband's parents. Both of them lived with Arya and her husband and seemed to have opinions about everything Arya did. So whenever Arya returned home, she would often vent her frustrations to me and our mother.
Mom, listen. My mother-in-law keeps commenting on the ingredients I use while cooking. She'll say things like, "How about this ingredient?" or "Benjamin grew up eating this flavor."
Benjamin is Arya's husband's name. Even our mother, who kindly listened to Arya's stories, had a somewhat puzzled expression. Understandably so, as our father was working currently in Canada and lived alone. That's why our mother couldn't be too forceful with Arya's in-laws. Our mother, who wasn't naturally assertive, was most concerned about causing any harm to me or Arya by speaking up. Arya also understood this, so she just wanted someone to listen. She wasn't seeking advice.
Gianna, be careful with your in-laws when you get married too.
I'll consider that when I decide to quit basketball. That's still a long way off.
Really? You're such a basketball fanatic.
We laughed together. Arya and I always have this kind of banter. We don't argue as sisters, we just share laughter.
By the way, Benjamin and I are planning a trip together.
Oh, that sounds great. Where to?
Italy.
When I heard Arya's story, I couldn't help but feel envious. Italy was a country I had always wanted to visit. However, in contrast to my excitement, Arya seemed somewhat downcast.
Benjamin won tickets through a company event, but they're only valid for a pair. So, we're worried about leaving the kids.
Upon further discussion, it turned out that initially, they hesitated to go because of their children. However, for some reason, Arya's mother-in-law strongly encouraged them, and so Arya and her husband decided to go. According to Arya, they probably think they'll have a leisurely time without the two of them around. Furthermore, Arya has some concerns.
Noah, especially our third child, doesn't warm up to my mother-in-law. The other two also seem a bit distant.
It seems Arya has more on her mind than just the trip. By the way, when are you leaving?
In a week. It's a 4-night, 6-day trip.
Upon hearing Arya's response, an idea occurred to me. I happen to have time off that week. So, I'll take care of the 3 kids. As I said that, Arya's face seemed to brighten a little. Even I want Arya to enjoy her trip without any worries. If there's something I can do to help, it's only natural. I had no idea at the time that this would turn into a house sitter in hell. On the day of Arya and her husband's trip, my mother, who works as a nurse, left early in the morning for her day shift at the hospital. Initially, I had planned to see them off by myself, but their children also wanted to go with me, so I took them along. They probably wanted to be with their parents for as long as possible. After seeing them off at the airport, I took their 3 children, Oliver, Levi, and Noah. Arya's in-laws were supposed to meet us at their house. "All right, kids. Let's head home," I called out, and all 3 nodded in agreement. Their synchronized response impressed me. Being triplets, they seemed perfectly in tune with each other. When we arrived at Arya and her husband's home, her in-laws welcomed us. Arya's mother-in-law approached me, and to my eyes, she resembled a witch. Heavy makeup, stiff hair cascading down her shoulders, and bold lipstick that would stand out even in the dark. "Hello. I'll be taking care of the kids starting today," I said politely. Her response caught me off guard.
"Well, there's a lot for you to do. First, prepare dinner. And I want to take a bath, so clean the bathroom quickly. We're also out of shampoo, so buy some later."
As we exchanged greetings, she continued listing demands one after another. I was dumbfounded. I hadn't come here to be a servant. My purpose was solely to look after the kids while Arya was away. Yet this woman treated me like a housekeeper. I mustered the courage to reply. I'm here to take care of the 3 children." She objected to me saying that.
"So, you plan to make these 3 do household chores?"
What? I was taken aback.
"Exactly. That's what I mean. Since my husband is away golfing for the next 3 days, I'm in charge of this house."
"In charge?" I muttered unconsciously, unsure if she heard me. She glanced back at me briefly as we entered the house and disappeared into the living room. Once inside, the kids headed straight for the washroom. Their synchronized run made me smile. But then her next words stunned me.
You 3 are so noisy. I can't hear the TV.
She shouted. The kids froze in place. Finally, little Noah mumbled,
"I'm sorry."
Without thinking, I stepped in. "Excuse me, but that's no way to speak to them. They're still in 3rd grade, after all." Her icy response cut deep.
"Their grades don't matter. It's about what I think."
How cruel. I whispered.
"You too. Arya always challenges me too."
She said, her words sharp as a blade of ice. It hurt to see her direct this at the young kids. "I'll take care of these children. Please relax," I said, choosing my words carefully. If I could keep her irritation away from the kids, it was worth it. Or rather, I hoped it would be. After that, the first day flew by in the blink of an eye. There were a few moments when her dissatisfaction seemed directed at the kids, but I quickly sensed it and avoided any conflict. Perhaps my basketball defensive skills helped. Still, I wondered if Arya always received such treatment. The more time I spent with this person, the more I understood why Arya would come home and vent her frustrations. And Arya isn't the only one dealing with her. With her husband and kids to care for, plus Arya's father-in-law joining the mix, it's terrifying to think about. A while back, Arya confided in me about something like this.
My father-in-law does nothing around the house and complains that the vacuum cleaner is noisy.
That's terrible.
So, guess what he said when I asked him to move a little?
Maybe something like, "Shut up." Arya shook her head vigorously.
He demanded money. He's going to kill time by playing outside, so he wants some money. What's more, he threatens to show no mercy if I secretly tell Benjamin.
That's awful. Given that Arya is a stay-at-home mom, she spends a lot of time with her in-laws. The stress accumulates daily. Yet despite it all, Arya can still laugh and share these stories. I admire her strength. On the first night at Arya and her husband's house, after Arya's mother-in-law had gone to bed, the 3 kids came to my room.
Gianna, we want to play basketball.
Their sudden request surprised me. What made you want to play basketball all of a sudden? They began excitedly explaining. Apparently, they watched a basketball movie, and Arya showed them videos of me playing, igniting their passion for basketball. Although they practiced with friends after school, they were struggling to improve. So, they decided to ask me when I arrived. How about trying tomorrow? It's Saturday, and there's a gym nearby that I occasionally use for practice. Their eyes sparkled as they replied, yes. I welcomed the break from being cooped up at home. And knowing that these kids were growing to love basketball because of me made me incredibly happy. The next day, even though it was only 7 a.m., the 3 kids were already getting ready.
Gianna, hurry.
As I got up, the 3 of them pounced on me, fully prepared to leave. Perhaps hearing their voices, Arya's mother-in-law woke up.
Hold on! Why are you so noisy early in the morning? Explain what's going on, Gianna.
I promised to teach these kids basketball.
What's so great about a sport where you just put a ball through a hoop? You can go, but make sure you finish your household chores.
With that, she disappeared back into her bedroom. I hurriedly finished laundry and breakfast preparations as I felt the pressure of keeping them waiting. The kids observed me while practicing their ball handling. When we arrived at the gym, the 3 of them were full of energy. I also rediscovered the joy of simply enjoying basketball, something I had forgotten since becoming a professional player. As a professional, my focus shifted to winning and losing, which was only natural. It was tied to income and, fundamentally, my job. Seeing these 3 kids genuinely playing basketball reminded me of something I had lost. All right, everyone, gather up. I taught them everything from basics to advanced techniques. Occasionally, they struggled, but their sense was better than I expected, and they picked things up quickly. They were beyond a 3rd grade level. Not out of favoritism, but I sensed a natural basketball talent in these triplets. They had dribbling skills and shooting form stability that even older kids struggled with. Maybe they could aim for a professional career. Curious, I asked them, "What are your dreams for the future?" The moment I saw their reactions, I realized it might have been a silly question. Their eyes sparkled.
Professional basketball players.
As expected of triplets, they harmoniously declared their dream. Hearing their dreams, I decided to support them wholeheartedly. All right. I'll turn you all into outstanding professional basketball players. Let's practice. They enthusiastically started practicing. But our joyful time was short-lived. When we returned home, we faced despair.
Gianna, come here. I need to talk to you.
Her expression was unusually serious. What happened? The triplets also seemed concerned about our unusual behavior. Unaware of their presence, Aria's mother-in-law continued.
Benjamin's plane crashed during landing.
Unexpected news plunged my world into darkness. My spine turned cold. Crashed? Are they okay? Her quiet headshake told the whole story. The kids came out, clinging to me as if their souls had been ripped away. To them, losing not only their mother but also their father, Benjamin, was an immeasurable sorrow. Tears streamed down my face. 1 month after Aria and her husband's passing, the remains that arrived in the United States couldn't be definitively identified as theirs, but the returned wedding ring was undoubtedly theirs. The funeral concluded, and my mother, who was much deeper in grief than I, traveled to Canada where my father was. My performance in games suffered. It became clear how significant Aria's presence had been. I hadn't realized how painful it would be to never see someone I loved again. Eventually, unable to continue playing due to emotional strain, I retired from professional basketball. A few weeks later, I started working as an ordinary office employee. And then, it happened. Out of the blue, Aria's mother-in-law called me. Hello, it's been a while.
We've decided to move to California.
Why so suddenly?
There's no point being where Benjamin isn't. We're going to live carefree. Now, to the main point. Since you don't seem likely to get married, take care of the 3 kids.
She conveyed her demand and chuckled over the phone. I couldn't fathom her true intentions, but given her personality, the triplets must have been an inconvenience. I decided to accept her words. Is that okay? I'd be happy to. Satisfied with my response, she raised her voice slightly.
Finally, I'll have more free time. Thank you, Gianna.
Her thank you was undoubtedly sarcastic. I understood she didn't mean it sincerely. But I also felt lonely being alone in this house that my mother had left behind. 3 days after the call with Aria's mother-in-law, life with the 3 kids Aria left behind began. Unlike when we played basketball together at the gym, their faces were understandably somber. Of course, they had lost both parents simultaneously. It would be strange for them to be cheerful. But I couldn't afford to wallow in sadness. If I did, we'd all fall apart. I vowed to protect these 3 kids no matter what. Once more, all of you, tell me your dreams for the future. This time, there was a brief pause, unlike before. But I waited for their words without adding anything. Noah, the youngest, spoke first.
Professional basketball players. Like Gianna.
The other 2 followed.
Yeah, me too.
And
I'll become a pro too.
then let's seriously aim for it. I'll wholeheartedly nurture all of you. Life after that took a whirlwind turn from our previous routine. First, after work, we started running together as a group of 4. During any free moments, I encouraged them to handle the basketball, and soon enough, their video game sessions disappeared. All three of them were intensely focused on basketball. On weekends, we repeated basic drills and reviewed techniques. Gradually, they entered 7th grade. Even after advancing to high school, all three of them naturally chose to join the basketball clubs. The names of the triplets quickly echoed through the basketball world. But this wasn't the end for them. The three of them received attention for their basketball skills, but ended up going to different high schools. Each received sports scholarships from their respective schools. When this fact became public, it shocked the basketball community that had expected the triplets to play together. Why attend different high schools? I genuinely wondered. However, their responses made me realize it was a foolish question. Noah spoke up first.
Because if we're on the same team, we won't get to compete against the strong players.
I still vividly remember the impact of those words. These kids were serious. All three of them enrolled in different powerhouse schools and joined their basketball teams. Naturally, this became a hot topic. But it didn't end there for my trio. They didn't just stay in the spotlight, they excelled. Each of them secured a starting position as freshmen. Eventually, the three schools faced off in a tournament. As first-year starters, they were naturally part of the competition. I had wanted to attend the tournament, but work during a busy period prevented me. So, I waited for their reports. Noah was the first to call.
Gianna, my team won!
Any of the three winning wouldn't have been surprising. Next came Oliver's call.
In the final match, we played against Levi's school. We missed winning by just 1 point.
Oliver, the eldest, spoke tearfully. I offered him words of encouragement. Shortly after, Levi called with good news. After winning and being runners-up, the schools are embarking on an intensive training camp in California this year. I initially wondered why California, but it quickly made sense. The practice partners are experienced basketball players from a certain circle. In other words, it's a training camp where high school students challenge adults. Indeed, practicing against stronger opponents is valuable experience. Unfortunately, Oliver couldn't participate, but he didn't dwell on it. From the day Levi and Noah went to the camp, Oliver increased his self-training intensity beyond the usual. The camp lasts for 1 week. I wonder how much stronger Levi and Noah will become during that time. Excitedly waiting, I suddenly found myself at the final day. On the evening of the last day, as I prepared dinner and waited, the doorbell rang. Have they returned? I wondered as I opened the door. To my surprise, Aria's parents-in-law, whom I hadn't seen in a long time, stood there. What on earth brings you here? I asked while opening the door. Aria's mother-in-law tearfully pleaded with me.
I didn't hear about it. How can those kids be so good at basketball? What's happening?
Aria's father-in-law added.
Why didn't you tell us? We've been embarrassed.
Both of them seemed upset. However, I couldn't understand why they suddenly brought this up. Embarrassment, what do you mean? I inquired. Aria's grandmother explained.
Levi and Noah were there. At the basketball training camp, I work as a janitor in that gym.
And? I asked.
Don't play dumb. Those kids are apparently the best at their respective schools.
She replied. I still didn't quite grasp her point. But since their conversation was something I didn't need to hear, I couldn't help but laugh. Clearly offended, she angrily confronted me.
Why are you laughing? Even though people were wondering who I was, those two acted like they didn't know me. And they had the nerve to say, "Please leave the court. You're disrupting our practice."
Aria's father-in-law chimed in.
My poor wife!
Aria's mother-in-law seemed unable to tolerate being embarrassed in public. Or perhaps she couldn't stand being treated as a stranger by the boys. While I still didn't fully understand her intentions, one thing was clear. Well, outsiders can be a nuisance. Even if they knew someone, it was unacceptable to interrupt important practice sessions. If those three become professional players, I'm sure she'd boldly step onto the court as their grandmother. In response to my words, she hesitated briefly but then retorted with a pout.
After all I've done raising those kids, they treat me like a stranger the moment they succeed. Absolutely. If you have a bad mother, your child won't grow up to be a good person.
Her words struck a nerve, and I immediately fired back. They never really warmed up to you, to begin with. And please refrain from insulting Aria. I felt anger rising within me after a long time, but even stronger was the indignation coming from the two who had just returned.
What are you doing in someone else's house, Grandma? And you even stepped onto the court. Just like Gianna said, we never liked you from the start.
The two of them were already over 5 feet 11 inches tall. Startled by their voices from behind, she seemed like a frightened child. Aria's grandmother.
You. Too.
Finally, she managed to speak, and Noah continued relentlessly.
You're probably upset because your abandoned grandkids are succeeding, right? Given your personality, you seem like the type to enjoy taking the upper hand. So you wanted to brag about being our grandmother, but we treated you like a stranger.
Their words seemed to hit the mark. Although she seemed to want to say something, no words came out. And her expression showed frustration. So, what's the reason for both of you being here? Even when I asked again, the two just stood there. I assume you didn't come all this way just to demand something now that you know they're succeeding? I continued my inquiry, but they crumbled further. Their silence confirmed that their purpose aligned with my observation. Feeling thoroughly exasperated, the kids piled on mercilessly.
Don't get ahead of yourself. We won't be seeing you anymore.
As expected of triplets. Although they attended different schools, their thoughts and emotional connection were flawless. And finally, one more person. Oliver, who had just returned from school club activities, delivered the final blow.
You know, we're aware that you were talking to this old man with annoyance about us, who lost our mother and had nowhere to go.
Well,
I was in a state of confusion at that time.
The two quickly offered excuses. However, the three responded in unison, leaving no room for doubt.
Then keep being confused forever. Don't ever get involved with us and Gianna again.
Their seamless coordination left Aria's parents-in-law stunned, and they hastily left the scene. Watching their retreating figures, the triplets laughed and said, "Pathetic." Their words made me laugh too. Since then, those two have completely disappeared from our lives. Time passed, and the triplets' high school days came to an end. Unfortunately, none of them secured victory in the final tournament of their third year. However, their post-high school paths were already guaranteed. Naturally, they were all headed toward becoming professional basketball players. And this time, all three would play on the same team. Their story became a hot topic, and there wasn't anyone in the pro basketball world who didn't know the triplets. Having witnessed their growth from the sidelines, I felt that their teamwork was unparalleled. It wasn't about logic. It was an invisible bond unique to triplets that seemed to guide them in the same direction. As their aunt and surrogate parent, it was heartwarming to watch their success. Although my life as a basketball player had crumbled, I now aim to support these three forever.
How did you like this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Until next time in the next video.